Hey everyone, welcome back to Historian. Let's talk about something that's been heating up in 2026. The United States is once again making headlines with its relentless pursuit of Greenland. Back in 2019, most people treated it as a joke, but today the laughter has stopped. We are seeing a shift in the global order, where the United States is openly treating sovereign territory like a real estate listing. The United States is, by almost any measure, the most powerful entity on the planet militarily, economically, and technologically. Because of this, many within the United States government, including the current administration and its supporters, believe it is an objective truth that every country would be upgraded by becoming American. But history is far more complicated. There is a list of nations, the Defiant Seven, that looked at the wealth of the United States and said, no, we'd rather be ourselves. Let's start with the Philippines. This is one of the most brutal chapters in American expansion. In 1898, Filipinos welcomed the U.S. Navy as liberators who helped them kick out the Spanish after 300 years of colonial rule. But the United States didn't come to bring freedom. They came with a checkbook. They paid Spain $20 million for the islands and the people living on them. When the Filipinos declared independence, the U.S. responded with benevolent assimilation, a fancy term for a war that killed over 200,000 people. The U.S. claimed it was the white man's burden to civilize them, but the Filipinos fought for decades. They finally got their independence in 1946, proving that a U.S. passport isn't worth as much as your own name. Then we have Cuba. President John Quincy Adams once famously compared Cuba to a ripe apple, stating that if it were severed from Spain, it would inevitably fall into the lap of the United States. For decades, the U.S. tried to buy it. After the Spanish-American War, the U.S. didn't technically annex Cuba, but they forced the Platt Amendment into the Cuban Constitution. This gave the United States the right to intervene whenever they wanted and turned Cuba into a giant sugar plantation and playground for American corporations. But the 1959 revolution was a statement of pride. Cuba chose to be poor and independent rather than a rich American colony. They've spent over 60 years fixing 1950s cars and living under embargoes just to keep the United States out of their backyard. Panama is even more complex. The country was essentially designed by the United States. When Colombia refused to let the U.S. build a canal, the U.S. supported a Panamanian revolution. The reward? The Canal Zone, a strip of land, cutting the country in two, where U.S. law applied and Panamanians were treated like foreigners in their own home. It took a century of blood, protests, and negotiation before the United States finally handed back the keys in 1999. And then there is the tragedy of Puerto Rico. They are currently a U.S. territory, and their people are U.S. citizens, but they are in a political limbo. They have the citizenship, but no vote for president, and no real representation in Congress. They have held many referendums. While some want statehood for the money, many others have fought it for over 100 years. Why? Because becoming the 51st state means the death of the Puerto Rican identity. It means English over Spanish and the melting pot over their Latin roots. To them, being an American state is just another form of disappearing. Now look at Canada. Since 1775, the United States has wanted Canada. They invaded in the Revolutionary War and again in the War of 1812. Assuming Canadians would welcome them, they didn't. Canadians preferred the stability of the British Crown over American Revolution. Even in modern times, Canada has rejected economic mergers. They look at the United States and see a country where you can go bankrupt from a single hospital bill. To protect their universal health care and social safety nets, Canada stays separate. They choose a humane society over maximum wealth. Iceland and Greenland are the strategic prizes of the North Atlantic. Iceland accepted U.S. military protection during the Cold War, but never allowed the U.S. to take sovereignty. They played a brilliant game, using their location as leverage to stay independent. And Greenland? In 2026, they are moving toward full independence from Denmark. To them, joining the United States isn't an upgrade, it's just switching one manager for another, right? As they are about to own the business. So what have we learned? The United States often views the world as a market, but these 7 nations view themselves as a home. They fear 4 things. The second-class trap, belonging to a superpower, but having no real power like Puerto Rico. The social nightmare. a system where money determines your right to live or have health care. The melting pot's violence. The way American culture swallows up local language and history. The target on the back. Knowing that being a U.S. territory makes you the first target in a global war. The United States may offer wealth, but it cannot offer the soul of a nation. As we see the rise of American exceptionalism again in 2026, these historical no's are more important than ever. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a nation can do is refuse a gift.